What's going on, Bills Mafia? Tuesday. Happy Tuesday to you. We got some good news today from camp. So this is a new thing that we're doing here at Built in Buffalo. I am Dave Myers, the owner and founder of Built in Buffalo. This is First and Five. We are going to either be live or we are going to have some pre-recorded content for you with all the Bills up-to-date news. And we had a big one today. Now, if you remember, on Saturday, there was a lot that came out after the Bills preseason game against the Giants where Sean McDermott said that he spoke with James Cook. James Cook agreed to do warm-up, do all the warm-ups with the team, but didn't agree to play. Said he was not going to play. If you watch that press conference with Sean McDermott, he did seem visibly kind of upset or put off by it. I don't know if maybe he's just kind of over answering the questions about James Cook, or maybe he's just thinking that he can't give too much information like Coach McDermott usually, that's how he is. He's kind of standoffish. He doesn't give you any insights. He doesn't let you in on what's going on behind closed doors. So we flip to Tuesday, and a report comes out from all the Bills beat writers and reporters saying that James Cook is going to practice. And I'm sure all of us were like, oh, here we go again. Like, we've seen this story before. We've heard this song and dance before. But turns out James Cook actually participated in Bills practice today. So I kind of want to talk about what James Cook means to the team. I kind of want to talk about what I think a James Cook contract would look like. And I kind of think I kind of want to talk about what this means for the team going forward, to have James Cook, what he means to the team, what he means to not just the offense, but to Josh Allen and things like that. Because we spoke on Billsology on Saturday night, me and Akeem. If you guys aren't watching Billsology on Saturday nights, it is our go-to flagship show. It's the show that started out Built in Buffalo. We talked at the end of the show about James Cook, what a contract would look like, what I think would be a fair deal for him, what I think would be a fair deal for the Bills, and I think what would keep him here for the next 3 years on top of the season that's coming up. So essentially, he'd be a Bill for the next 4 years. So that has to put the mindset of a lot of Bills fans at ease, seeing him back at practice, going through, doing reps, taking handoffs from Josh, doing all the pre and post practice, activities out there. Very stoic. Didn't seem like he was overly enthusiastic, but he was, there participating. So a couple things that stand out is the Kyren Williams contract that the Rams gave to him this past week. It's a 3-year contract, $33 million, $23 million guaranteed. And I think that's kind of where the Bills need to kind of focus in on, as far as, okay, this is where the table has been set. This is a guy who had similar production to James Cook the last 2 years. They were both drafted in the same draft class. One thing to note about Kyren Williams is he was 70% of the team's rushing yards and 74% of the team's scrimmage touchdowns. Obviously not passing, but so that's a big chunk, right? He accounts for more than what James Cook does. James Cook, on the other hand, does have more receiving yards than Kyren Williams. So he is relied upon more in the passing game with the Joe Brady offense and stuff like that. So that's something that needs to be taken into account. Now, a lot of Bills fans will say that, well, James Cook's not a 3-down back. James Cook only gets 40 to 45% of the snaps at running back. He should not be paid like a 3-down back. And I agree with that. I think that if you look at Derrick Henry and you look at the Saquon Barkleys, those guys that are 3-down backs, those guys that are on the field in the 2-minute drill, those guys that are on the field at the end to close out a half or close out a game. The Bills used Ty Johnson for that. They did that in the Chiefs game. Everybody was saying, where's James Cook? Where's James Cook? And I think a lot of fans forgot that the Bills were using the recipe in that Chiefs game for what they did all season long. Ty Johnson was the guy that they wanted on the field in those 2-minute drills, last 3 minutes of a game type situations. And the Bills didn't want to break away from the mold that had gotten them to the AFC Championship game. But I will say, in the AFC Championship game, Bills versus Chiefs, James Cook was arguably the best Bills skill position player. He had that ridiculous touchdown where he just refused to go down, extended the ball over the goal line. Probably one of the best rushing touchdowns I've seen in the last 10 years as far as effort. So my thought process throughout this whole thing has been, since it started back 5-6 months ago when James Cook went on Instagram and put 15 million on his Instagram live, and then Bills Mafia, we collectively lost our minds thinking that you're crazy, you're out, you're out in left field, like that's never going to happen. My thought process has been the entire time that I don't think he's going to get 15 million. I don't. I don't think that he deserves to get 15 million because, like I alluded to earlier, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, guys that are rushing for nearly 2,000 or 2,000 plus yards and are carrying, 75% of the workload. Those are the guys that are going to get the $15 million. But I don't want the Bills to ever take away skill position players from Josh Allen. Anything that can help his life be easier, I'm for it. Right now, a lot of people were quick to say he can go, trade him. He's money hungry, this and that. We have to remember he plays a position in the NFL that, it's kind of, you get a contract or you're a rookie and then you're kind of tossed aside. We draft and we move on. We redraft, we move on. And the Bills have done that with Devin Singletary, with Zach Moss. They brought in veterans here and there on 1-year deals. So he's going to want to get paid, and he's coming off a career year. I mean, he had 16 rushing touchdowns in the regular season. So it's something that a lot of fans need to understand. Like, this guy means a ton to this offense. And I feel like this past season, yes, I think the 16 touchdowns are probably an outlier. I don't think that that's going to be sustainable. But what I will say is the breakaway plays that James Cook is able to have on his resume from 2024, I think that is sustainable. I think there's not another back on this roster that can do what James Cook does once he gets through the line of scrimmage. He has that ability to score from anywhere on the field. You saw the game against Miami early on where he basically was the offense. You saw the game against the 49ers where he got outside and the weather seemed to not be an issue. The snow on the ground, the icy, wet turf conditions didn't seem to be an issue, and he broke off that long run. And that's something I don't think the Bills have other than James Cook on the roster. So, again, I think that if you can add as many skill position players or keep as many skill position players with the Bills, you do that. You look at the wide receiver room, and everybody's been talking about the wide receiver since the end of the season, even back into last season when Josh is throwing touchdowns to Mac Hollins, and we're trying to figure out what Keon Coleman is, and Dalton Kincaid had a down year. And, obviously there's 𝐿_Shakir, and he's always going to be the constant. But if you can have a guy that you know what you're going to get, because there's countless times where a lot of Bills fans, if you go on social media, especially on X, and you see game day threads of what's happening in real-time action, a lot of Bills fans are talking about, where's James Cook? Why isn't James Cook getting the ball? Why aren't we handing it off to James Cook? Why isn't he getting involved? So I think that that's a huge deal. And I think that looking at this contract through James Cook's eyes is something that we haven't done as a fan base. We haven't done it enough justice as a fan base. Now, I don't know where the information's coming from on his side. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to point fingers. All I know is that either early on in this process, he might have got some bad advice. We all know his brother Dalvin did this with the Minnesota Vikings, where he held out, and it became an ugly situation for that organization. And his agent, we don't know where he stands. We've heard some things here and there, snippets here and there on social media, of what his agent has kind of put into James' ear. And then we saw 𝐬𝐮𝐞𝐿 show up at mandatory minicamp, right? He was out in front of the media saying, I want to be here. I'm a leader on this team. I want to help this team get to our ultimate goal, and that's win a Super Bowl. I'm a veteran entering into year 4 now. I'm not a rookie anymore or a second-year sophomore player. I'm a guy that the team is looking for leadership, and I have to be a leader. And I think that went a long way with not just the media, but I think that went a long way in that locker room. I think that went a long way in the front office. Again, I don't want to speak for them because I'm not in the building. I don't have any insider scoop. This is just based off of, what we've seen and what we've heard. And then he showed up to minicamp at St. John Fisher, and he was a participant in the first few days there. And then we get to preseason week 1 against the New York Giants. And, right before then is where it's like, okay, he's now holding in and he's not participating in practice. He's in street clothes. There was some rumblings. Well, maybe he has some sort of minor injury that the Bills aren't disclosing. And it looks like it's a hold in. And then it happened again another day. And it's like he's just riding an exercise bike or he's just standing on the sideline in sweats. So preseason week 1 comes, we see 𝐬𝐮𝐞𝐿 warming up with the team. We're like, okay. And then 𝐬𝐮𝐞𝐿 doesn't play. Sean McDermott hits the podium and Sean McDermott says, we had conversations. I had a good conversation with James, and we asked him if he would go through the warm-up process with the offense, and he agreed. But James also informed us that he was not going to practice or was not going to participate in the game. So then we get to Sunday, Monday, then we get to today. And we, again, as I alluded to when I started the show, 𝐬𝐮𝐞𝐿 is dressed and participating. So what changed? That's the question. I don't know if there's things in the background that are happening. Maybe the Bills and James are close. Sean McDermott did say that they've had some more dialogue since the game. And there's been some more interactions between both sides, 𝐬𝐮𝐞𝐿 and the Bills. So you have to think that there's a deal is coming. You have to think that something's in the works. You have to think that they are closer than what some fans are anticipating, right? Like, this is the first hold-in in Brandon Beane's tenure, right? We had a little bit of a situation with Jordan Poyer a couple years back, but it really didn't amount to much. It wasn't as big of a spotlight. It wasn't as big of a story. Obviously, Hard Knocks wasn't around everything, filming, for weekly television. So it's interesting that he is back at practice, and the new episode of Hard Knocks drops tonight. So I don't know how much is going to be focused on him on this episode when it comes out tonight, but you got to think there's going to be a chunk there of 𝐬𝐮𝐞𝐿, which will be interesting to see, because maybe we get to see some things that aren't being portrayed into the media or into the spotlight or out there on, on X or on Facebook or wherever, the content creators are at. So I put there on the graphic on the screen the Kyren Williams deal. If you don't know what his deal is, it's 3 years, $33 million. He got $23 million guaranteed from the Rams. So I think that, like I said, that's a starting point. I think that I would offer a little bit more. And I would offer a little bit more because that, to me, if I was Brandon Beane, and I'm not, and I don't have any insider scoop here, but if I'm Brandon Beane, I would give him a little bit more than that, because whenever we see wide receivers, quarterbacks, defensive ends, all the higher paying positions, there's always a starting point, right? Whoever the first guy is basically the template for what these contracts could look like. Perfect example, if you look at the quarterback contract market, there's a lot of guys that were getting paid more money than Josh Allen who are not better quarterbacks than Josh Allen. It was just the template of the position. It's an important position. This is where it is. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to pay that position for teams that think that they have their franchise guy. And most of them do have that guy. So that Kyren Williams deal, I feel like, is fair. I mean, if you average it out, it's $11 million a year. And I know it's based off of, there's signing bonuses and there's things pushed back seasons, and it's not 11 every single year, but that's the average annual value. So I think if I'm looking at James Cook, young guy, 25, you want to have him here for the next 3 years, I would do 3 years, 34 and a half. That gives him 500,000 more than Kyren Williams for a guy who's got basically the same amount of production, and you give him 24 million guaranteed. That way you can look at it and say, you know what, James, we've given you $1 million more guaranteed than what the Los Angeles Rams paid Kyren Williams, a guy who has more snaps, a guy who's had more touchdowns, a guy who's had touches. So I don't know where that lies with or where that lands with James Cook. I don't know where that lands with his representation and stuff like that. And again, I'm not in the building. I don't have sources that I, spout out onto social media. I just think that I hope this deal gets done before week 1. I hope we don't have to worry about it. I hope he doesn't play on an expiring contract for the entire 2025 season, because if he has a really good season, the Bills are not going to be able to afford him going forward after the season. So one note that I kind of brought up, and I've brought up on social media, is that you have to think that Brandon Beane really wants James Cook. Why do I say that? Because the Bills have not tried to extend one of the running backs that they've drafted. Obviously, they parted ways with Devin Singletary. They probably could have brought him back on a cheaper deal than what he got, on the free agent market. But Brandon Beane has shown that he is willing to extend the running back position, which a lot of fans said that he's doesn't put enough emphasis on that position. So it's going to be interesting to see if this works out. I hope it works out. If you guys are watching this, whether you're on YouTube, please subscribe, hit that notification bell. We got a lot of content coming this season. We completely reworked our entire live schedules. We reworked all of the content that we want to put out to Bills Mafia. We're going for a lot of quality content this year. Please smash the like if you're watching on Facebook. Share this. If you're watching on X, please share this. And like I said, if you're watching this after I go live, drop comments, drop your thoughts, drop what you'd pay James Cook. What do you think that looks like? Again, I'm going to be live every day. I'm going to have pre-recorded videos every day, whether it's breaking news topics or just my thoughts on what's going on with the Bills heading into the season. And once the season rolls upon us, we'll be here covering all of the Bills news and updates right there. So let me know what you guys think. My thoughts are James Cook is an important part of what the Bills do on offense. I know Joe Brady schemes games. If you, like I said, that Dallas Cowboys game sticks out to me from a couple years ago when he just owned the Dallas Cowboys. The Bills told the Cowboys basically, we're going to run with James Cook and you cannot stop what we're doing. And they couldn't. Now, kudos to the offensive line. They had a big hand in all of his success. But I think that you have to keep intact some of these skill position players, because a lot of the wide receiver room and the tight end room, you're not getting the production that you're getting out of the running back position with James Cook. You're just not. We're piecing together the wide receiver position, it seems like, every year. Hopefully this is the year. They made a big acquisition and got, Joshua Palmer. Hopefully Keon comes into his own. Hopefully we get some progression from Dalton Kincaid in the tight end room. But it is what it is. Let's just hope that this can get done. I think we've passed the ugly stage. I think we've passed the hold in portion, and I think it's only up from here. I do expect the Bills to get a deal done. I'm hoping sooner than later, hopefully as soon as this week, if not, hopefully before the season starts. Again, there's that weird period after the third preseason game. There's a good bit of time before September 7th against the Baltimore Ravens. That might be a time. And also, look, this is not the major topic of discussion here, but look for some restructures to happen. I really anticipate the Bills restructuring Dion Dawkins, saving a bunch of money this year. I really think that the Bills look at him as a cornerstone. He's entering year 9, but I do see him being here for the foreseeable future. I feel like Dawson Knox is another contract that the Bills might want to say, hey, we're not really getting all of what we actually initially paid for. Do some restructuring to try to get, some more money now, whether it be for before season cuts that other teams make, that, there's always roster cuts, that players that you don't expect to get cut in a position that you might need. Plus, there's always in-season acquisitions where you got to bring guys up from the practice squad or trade deadline. If you're looking to, if you're a buyer at the trade deadline, like Brandon Beane seemingly wants to be every year to kind of, put a seal on this roster heading into the home stretch. So I see some great comments in the comment section. Again, if you guys are watching this and you've made it all the way through, I appreciate you. Dave Myers, founder, owner of Built in Buffalo. This is First and Five. I'll be here every day until the end of the season, even on the weekend. I'm going to try to hit a stretch of videos. If it's not live, it's going to be pre-recorded. Smash the like, subscribe, drop some comments, put in there what you think would be a contract that you'd pay James Cook. Hopefully we can let James Cook, like it says on my shirt here, we can let James Cook in this season, and the Bills can get that number 1 seed in the AFC and head to the Super Bowl. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for watching. Again, first episode of First and Five. I'll be back tomorrow. You guys all have a great day. Go Bills.